So the plan for today is to discuss a few ideas around financial freedom and smart investments. Uh, Plan for today is maybe I'll take 5 minutes to set the context. We'll have a presentation and a discussion for around half an hour, 35-40 minutes. And while we will also have time towards the end to discuss questions and answers, we will also see if we can discuss things in between. I hope that's a good plan. Now, so wait. Now, yeah. Now, I think last time when we spoke, there was we were at the worst time of pandemic. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of unknowns, and of course, a lot of things went wrong during the pandemic, and we all know somebody who we have lost, right? But now things seem to be better. There is what we call a K-shaped recovery, right? Some businesses and some companies and some careers, they are doing very well, while there are many other careers who have many other businesses, mostly offline businesses, mostly the businesses that needed physical presence and physical movement. I think those businesses, likes of say restaurants or food or even flights and hotels and all of that, it has suffered tremendously. But at the same time, if we see the businesses like say telecom, IT, healthcare, and all of that, they're doing very well. And that's how the world operates, right? Every few years, this kind of change, major change hits us, and the people who are in a good position, they do better, and those who are not in so good position, they kind of suffer. But that's how the world operates. We have to live with it. Sorry, now I'm not able to move my slide. Yeah. Now, what we just to give share some credibility, right? So, I had the opportunity to work for Tata Group for almost 16 years. Had the opportunity to study at London Business School and Hong Kong University, and then other interesting thing was I had the opportunity to work with thousands of very smart entrepreneurs, investors, and of course executives, leaders, especially founders who have done amazing things, right? So what we will discuss here is more of what I learned from them and all the experimentation I have done myself. So that's the thought. My two our two my main interest I have is how do we design a good life? How do we do better in terms of health, wealth, and joy? When we talk about health, it is about mind, body, and soul. When you talk about wealth, it is more about your career, your finances, that is money, and of course the skills you have, and the joy that is you get from your following your hobbies, spending time with your loved ones, building your families, and having those long-term relationships, right? So that's one of the focus areas, and this financial freedom also is part of this wealth bucket. So that is what we'll discuss more about today, right? I'm just not sure why my slides are not it. Yeah. And what we are trying to do here is we are trying to build a community. Just a minute, let me fix my slides. Something is not correct here. Just let me just see, change it a bit. I'll do it online. Wait, just a minute. Share screen. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes, we can see now
I'm
your
sorry
screen.
about this. Stop. Just a minute. Okay. Just a minute. I'll run it online so that it's better. Just a minute. I'm just sharing it again. So, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see. Yeah.
Is it a full screen, or
Yes.
you're seeing it
Yes.
seeing slides as well?
It's
It's
full.
yeah, we can see the slide at beside. No, there is
Okay. Okay. Enter full screen. Yeah, now it's better, right?
yeah.
Yes, it's a
Yeah.
full screen now.
Yeah. So we, as I said, we will we want to work on having a good life design, and within that there's this aspect of financial freedom, uh, and that is what we will talk about today more. But at the same time, the other purpose is also to build a community of like-minded people and share and learn together. So we will also organize many more sessions in that in this whole area of life design. My personal interests are venture building and executive success. So we'll talk about angel investing. We will talk about how can you build systems and processes, like build a second brain that can work for you even when you are sleeping. We'll talk about some of the best productivity tools and systems that are available for us, and they're used very well by some of the best performers. We will also talk about how can you pursue real life MBA, because we have seen lots of people spending years and uh, millions of rupees on pursuing MBA, but real life MBA is what much more different, and nothing teaches you like what life teaches you. So we can talk about that. These will be sessions organized in future. So just a small announcement around that. Now, who is this session for? This session is for those who believe that they can do better with their finances, personal, family, business, either now if you are at the start of the career or even later. I know we have some veterans here, we have some specialists here. All of us have done well in our careers, not whether it is marketing, whether it is HR, whether it is technology, whether it is IT, all of that. But when it comes to managing our wealth and managing our finances, there is always so much we can learn. This session is probably not for those people who are already specialists in financial management, right? People who are traders, people who are who are venture capitalists, people who have got family offices and they can employ professionals to manage their finances. So maybe it's not for them, but hopefully there is something for all of us to learn. Right. And then this is something which which nobody talks about, the how the learning works, right? The learning works when you listen, you only retain 5%, but when you read, when you teach, when you discuss, when you demonstrate, when you practice, the retention is quite high. And that's where this whole thing of experiential learning is very important, because unless you do it, there's hardly anything you can learn. We have been learning for ages. We have learned in schools, we have learned in colleges, but if you think about it, how much do we even remember what we learned in colleges or schools or even all the classrooms? This session is more to create awareness, and also there is some idea and thought around how we can implement all these learnings that we will discuss towards the end of the session. But the idea is to create a platform where we can learn together and we can experiment together, right? So that's the purpose. Many of the things which we will discuss here, I have experimented them myself, and there are tons of books like this that I have studied in great details, and of course from the masters, that how they look at the markets, how they look at the finances, and how they make decisions. So it is a summary of everything that is there, personal experiences and all these other inputs. Performance wise, my portfolio has done okay. Equity has done, I think equity has done 25% plus. The startups have tripled in valuation in 2 years. The debt is of course 7-8%. The real estate, we have got lots of experiences, lots of success and lots of failure. And from all that learning, I've tried to put these thoughts together. Yeah. Now coming to the main presentation, we will cover 5 aspects. What is financial freedom and how do we achieve it? What is the big picture? What is the forest? And why strategic asset allocation is important? Then we get into trees, like when you talk about asset allocation, what are these assets and how we should look at them? what are the tricks and traps we should be aware of. Then, of course, what is in it for us? What are the actionable insights? And there is some call to action and summary we will talk about. Now, another thing, this is what my boss always used to say: in God we trust. Everybody else has to bring data, because all of us can have our own views and opinions, but you can't have your own data, right? Nothing here should be considered as a financial advice, because this is more for learning. Because we all are in a separate situation. We have different journeys. Things change as you change the market, you change the geography, you change the location, you change your background, because there is no one size fits all. We have to leverage the insights and experiences, but while you decide, it has to be an informed decision, taking into consideration what is happening in your life that time, right? Now, financial freedom, right? I mean, for some, it might, I used to think for 10 years that, when will I get financially free? How do I achieve it? When do I have to stop doing the work which I don't like and work with the people I don't really respect? And then one fine day, somebody told me it's financial freedom. It can be easy, and the definition is like this, right? If your return on savings is more than your annual expenses, covering your inflation without worrying about revenue, right? For example, just to take a hypothetical example, if you have a savings of say 1 crore rupees, I have to talk in crore rupees because most of the audience is Indian, but those who are not from India, I can explain in dollars as well. But suppose you have, you have 1 crore rupees, and if you earn 8% interest on that, right? So annually you earn 8 lakh rupees as an interest, and your expenses are like, say, whatever, 5 lakh rupees, then I think you're already free, provided your cost of living is not going up significantly. That is something that we have to be aware of, right? If your returns can cover your expenses and inflation, you're doing okay. And if you can make your money work for you, nothing like it. In dollar terms, again, if you have $1 million, and if you are earning say 5% interest rate, so you're earning $50,000, and if your cost of annual expenses are less than $30,000, then I think you're already free. That gives you the choice to think and do things differently. This is just for explanation. Other important thing is, you need not be a bull or bear, right? But you definitely don't want to a bakra. That is a sacrificial lamb. Because if you get stuck in wrong financial assets, nobody can save you. And for everything, there is an opportunity cost, right? See, if you're stuck in a real estate of worth, say, a crore rupees in last, say, 6-7 years, and real estate prices haven't moved that much, that 1 crore, had you deployed in some other better asset classes, would have easily become 2 crore. So there is an opportunity cost to everything. So that means, while it doesn't look good on your paper, it doesn't hit your bank balance, but you still have lost a crore in an opportunity, right? So we have to be careful about that. The other thing is, there's no one size fits all, right? So how do you do your risk profiling? I would like to also run a few polls here as we speak, and I'm just to make it interactive, right? So maybe I'm launching a poll, and you can participate in this poll, and then tell me, have you done your risk profiling? Yes or no? And if you have, then what kind of investor you are? You can respond to this poll by clicking the buttons. I think somebody needs to mute if there's a background noise. We have got 50% responses. We will wait for 10 seconds. Okay, the responses are still coming in, so just few seconds. Okay, fine. So this is what the poll says, right? Half of us, not less than half of us, have done the risk profiling, which is okay, but that needs to be addressed, because everything depends on what is your risk tolerance and what is your risk profile. And what we see is what kind of risk investor profile you are. I think almost 45% have got a balanced profile. So that's interesting. So let me share the results as well. This is what we have seen. So good. I think that's a good start. We can definitely look at how you can do your risk profiling as we progress. Now coming back to this presentation, right? Again, my slides are visible, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
so
nice.
I would highly recommend everybody to do a risk profiling, because that will decide how you are going to take decisions, right? Yeah. Now we will get into the bigger aspect, that is called, what we call is the forest, the asset allocation, which is depending on your risk. You have to decide what is your optimal asset allocation, which will minimize your risk and optimize your returns. Not maximize, but optimize your returns. We will take the questions as we go. There are ways to do the risk profiling, as Subed has asked. So why this is so critical, right? Because we live in a world where there are so many choices for us, right?
Mahesh, can you remove the poll result? It is overlapping the slides.
Yeah. Just a minute. I'm just.
No, I think you need to close that. Everybody is able to close.
Oh, you can close it yourself.
Yeah, yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Mahesh,
So,
you are good actually to continue.
Yeah. Good. So see, the thing is, the problem of our generation is we have got so many choices for career, for location, even for investments, right? You can keep cash, you can put money in fixed deposit, government bonds, you can have real estate, you can have residential real estate, commercial real estate, you can invest in equities. Within equities, there is private equity, public markets, you can invest in commodities, gold, and all of that. And they have their different risk reward profile. So if you see in equities, while the rewards are higher, risk is also higher. In cash, while we say there is no risk, but there actually the risk is also there. So that's why when you have so many choices, how do you go about investing? And as I said, we have to look at the data. If you look at the data of last 35 years from all over the world, from all across all the markets, it shows you some very interesting picture. So the way it happens is we are small guys, right? We are retail investors. Maybe some of us are businessmen, but the markets are managed and the asset prices are decided by the big boys, whether these are foreign institutional investors, whether these are domestic institutional investors, whether these are large promoters, whether these are large family offices. And if you see, in 2020, best performing asset was gold. In 2019, it was US equities, large cap. 2018, it was bonds. 2017, it was emerging market stocks like India, China, Brazil, Russia. 2016, it was US, but small cap stocks. So what happens is the wealth gets rotated. There is a fixed wealth that is there, and of course it grows year on year. When there's growth, that wealth goes up. When there is pandemic, that wealth goes down, and the prices are decided at say London Metal Exchange or the people who have the deep pockets. They decide how the prices will move. They will decide whether the Indian market goes up or down, right? So the money rotates across these asset classes. Sometimes it's real estate, sometimes it is international markets, sometimes it is US markets, large caps, sometimes it's small caps, sometimes it's emerging markets, sometimes it's bonds. So each asset class has their good things and not so good things, right? So what is the solution? How do you deal with this? So that is where I started researching, and then what I saw was how the smartest of the smart people in the world and the richest of the rich people in the world, how do they invest? They don't just invest in equities, or they just don't invest in cash, or they just don't invest in real estate. So So this UBS bank, they have done a very good research of more than few hundred family offices which have got tremendous wealth. That is, at least they have more than $1 billion to invest, and they have best of the bankers in the world and investment professionals in the world. They do investment decisions for them. And this is how the portfolio of the smartest and the richest people looks like. So 60% of their money will be in traditional asset classes like equities, fixed income, that is debt, cash, 30% equities, 17% in fixed income, 13% cash. Within equities, 23% in developed markets, 6% in developing markets, that is like India, China, Russia. Of course, China is almost going to the developed market. Even fixed income, 10%, 11% in developed markets, 6% in emerging markets. Cash for some tactical, if short-term opportunities. 35% they invest in private equity, the companies that are not listed yet but have got a huge potential. 14% goes into real estate. 5% into hedge funds. Within private equity, they prefer to invest some of the money themselves, and they prefer to 7%, 9% they invest themselves by their professionals, and 7% the money they give it to the professional fund managers. They get some fees, but they manage the money that way. So they are not like, so this is how the smartest and the richest people look at money. They are not like, sorry, I will bet somewhere something here and there. There's a very systematic approach, and this asset allocation, they closely track all the time. And they are, that's how they go about it. While we are probably, it won't be applicable to everybody, but we are all looking for one or two assets or maybe some short-term opportunities, which I thought is something we have to be mindful of. Likewise, the Blackstone Group, they are the largest investment managers in the world. They have their very diversified portfolio, which goes across asset classes, whether it is global multinationals, whether it's US large cap, European long only, emerging markets, Japan, private equity, real estate, and all of that, gold, all of that. So because they are very careful about how they allocate their money across these asset classes. Now, I'm not saying we have to compare ourselves with them, but we have to be mindful of this, because I know people, they're 100% in real estate, and that real estate is not generating anything for last 6-7 years. There are people who are 100% in debt markets like fixed income and deposits. That's fine. The risk is less, but there are a few other polls we will do, and then we will see how some of those things are hurting us. Then there is also, you need to create, the bottom line is you need to create a portfolio which will be good in all market conditions. When the markets go up and markets go down, the risk is minimum and the returns are optimum. And that is how these smartest of the smart guys do it. So what we'll do is we'll also run one more poll so that we can see whether this is making sense, right? Yeah, I'll do, this is polling, stop sharing. Yeah, this we did. Now let's look at asset allocation. Yeah. I'm launching this poll. You can check again. Please take this poll if you can. Our first question is, do you track and monitor your own strategic asset allocation? Yes, no, no idea. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Mahesh.
You are.
Yeah. Okay, I've started getting responses. We'll wait for a few more seconds.
Couldn't get the last two questions, Mahesh. If you can help us. What is untitled question?
What is?
Untitled questions. The last two questions in the poll.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think just select something and submit. I think that will enable this. Button. Yeah, it's a dummy question. Yeah.
Okay. Something we have. I also tried this for the first time.
No issue. I think the first two are relevant, and I have.
Yeah. So I'm ending this poll. So 35%, 36% of us are monitoring it very closely. 46% have some idea, and 20% have no clue. That's okay. Now at least we know. Then where are you investing? Oh, good to know that everybody is investing somewhere. But the question was where you prefer to invest. So 30% is in fixed deposits, 43% is in equity markets, public markets, 5% in private markets, that is PE, VC, angel, 20% in real estate. So good. I think there is a good mix here. But the key point is, are you missing on some high quality, high return assets? And are you getting stuck in some low quality, low return assets? Because these things are very costly. Because you see, if you bought a house for 1 crore in say 2014, and today also the value is the same, you can't even sell it because the market is down, and you have been paying rent, you have been paying taxes, you're doing maintenance, and you are also paying your EMI. The rent is hardly there. That doesn't even cover the maintenance. Sometimes it does give you 2-3%. So that means you have lost almost a 1 crore rupee opportunity. So same thing with other things. So that's why this is important. I didn't share the results, but yeah, sorry. So the results are the same. So good. I think at least the discussion is being helpful, right? So okay. Now let's get back to, so that was the forest, right? What is it that the big picture, how you should be mindful of your own asset allocation and how you should track it, right? Now let me go to the full screen. Now let's get into the individual asset classes. Now this is, we don't have time to get details into each of these asset classes, but we will try to cover some few high level details, right? If you look at the Indian stock market, and this also reflects in global stock markets, between 93, actually the India opened up in 91, right? While our market is around for last 50 years, between 93 and between 2003, nothing happened. There were no returns, and that's why people never entered the market. Before that, there was hardship, there were scams and everything. Then it started growing, right? Between 2007, it went up significantly. At that time, it was around 21,000. Then the crash happened, Lehman crash happened. It came down to 10,000. And then again, after 2008, it has gone up significantly. Now we are at 55,000 Mumbai Stock Exchange. The thing is, people think that market only goes up. That is not the case. If you look at Japan, and if you adjust for inflation, last 40 years, Japanese market hasn't gone anywhere. Even if you look at Indian market between 2008 and 2020, even though the index has doubled, the rupee has also become half of dollar value, right? That time rupee, in 2008, dollar to rupee was 40 rupees. Now it is 75 rupees. So while the market has gone up, the dollar rupee value has gone down. So that those things we have to be really mindful of, right? And it's, of course, if you are a professional trader, then all these things don't apply to you. But if you want to do serious equity investments, right, then it's a very different game. You have to find out what are those great companies, right? What are those great and clean companies? And it's a full-time job. You have to monitor them quarter on quarter. You have to monitor all these things, right? What kind of investments they are making, what kind of sales they're having, what is the conversion rate, what are their profits, what are their how is their balance sheet discipline, how are they generating cash, how are the return on returns? Because many companies, and it's a full-time job, you can't do it, and you need specialized skills to do it. And only those companies who have that kind of revenue growth, that kind of profit growth. They are very well differentiated in the market. Those companies create value. And to find those companies, I think it takes a lot of time and effort, and sometimes it's probably best to leave it to specialists. That's why we try to invest to mutual funds, but mutual funds also, sometimes they have a very high cost. Anytime we invest, I think we have to be very mindful of what are the costs involved in the investing, right? So if you see this chart, if you are investing 1 lakh rupees for last 40 years, and if you are paying say 2.5 lakh rupees as 2.5% as investment, your actual corpus is way lesser than what it would have been without expenses. So you have to be careful about expenses as well, and that's why the regulators have said that you can invest without the middleman, you can invest directly, and there are people who are also willing to see that you pay only if they perform. So those kind of opportunities are also there. The bottom line is, if you're playing in the market, you have to be extremely careful, and you have to work with the experts. You have to be mindful of your expenses. Trading is not recommended unless you are a specialist and you're a full-time trader and you know the technical charts and all of that, and not to expose yourself to too much risk. While equity is the best performing asset class, and it usually does very well over a long duration, but there are downsides as well. Like I said earlier also, the currency markets are the largest markets. Even if we feel that Indian equity markets are going well, if the currency markets are not supporting you, that means it's an illusion actually. And that's where, if you see, the largest amount of wealth that got created in the last 20 years is in the US markets, because dollar has been getting stronger, rupee has been getting weaker. So there you get dual benefit. You get a currency benefit as well as you get the stock market growth benefit. And there are ways you can get exposure to international markets, and that can help in, and it also hedges your risk. Basically, as I said, right, if you look at the rich people portfolio, they don't depend on one country, one currency, one market, one asset class. They are very careful about their asset allocation, their diversification, and then making those right decisions. So that's the thought. Let me see if we can do one more poll, and then yeah. Stop sharing. Polling. So if I'm launching this poll again, you can take a look. If you invest 10,000 rupees in a fixed deposit with 5% return, how much money you will have at the end of 10 years? Also, how many mutual funds you have, and we will get into startup also. That will come up later, but you can try. If you're investing in a startup, would you prefer to buy a house or rent a house? And if you are planning to invest in a private company, a startup, how will you gauge that company? How will you judge that company? Yeah, we have got a few responses. Lot more, maybe 10 more seconds for you to fill, since there are more questions. Okay. The responses are still coming in, so just maybe 5 more seconds. Good. These are all anonymous polls, so you don't have to worry about your information getting stolen or something. Okay, I'll end the poll now. So yeah, the fixed deposit answer is 10,000 rupees becoming 1.60 lakh 90 or see the first question, most of you got it right. 50% have got it right, while all these answers are correct actually. See, if you just calculate in rupee terms, if you apply 5% return, so 10,000 becomes 1,60,000, right? But if you apply inflation to this 10,000 rupee, because inflation is 7%. So actually, if you apply inflation, that is approximately 90,000. And on top of that, if you apply taxes, it comes down to 84,000. So people who think their money is safe in fixed deposit, they are under a wrong impression. Now, how many mutual funds you have? Less than 20, none is 31%, less than 20 is 69%, more than 20, thankfully there's nobody more than 20. Good. So I think one other mistake that we all do is sometimes we get into too over diversification. So I know somebody who has got 55 mutual funds. On an average, Indians have got 40 to 50 mutual funds, and it is very hard to track them. The expenses are high, the charges are high, and all of that. Buy and rent, it's a 60% want to buy, 38% want to rent. Now that's an interesting observation. Actually, there are very interesting models where
Mahesh,
yeah
I have a question. So regarding the first question, so I think this is not relevant to our discussion, but when you put 10,000 in a fixed deposit at the rate of 5% per year, and if we put the deposit for 10 years, then how the calculation is 1,60,000?
It's see if you these are approximate numbers, right? I mean, this is just to show you that how the things will change, right? See, the three things you have to see is, I haven't done the numbers myself. I just thought this is something interesting. This idea here is to showcase how the taxation and inflation affects you. If you apply, you can do either you can do simple interest or compound interest. It's approximately, I've just put a number. You can do your calculation. I'm not getting into calculator right now. But the mistake we make is we just look at the headline numbers. The problem is you have to look at the holistic picture, right? That's the thought. So 10,000 it's actually every year 10,000, not one time 10,000. So you have to, if you invest 10,000 rupees every year, then it becomes 1,60,000. If you apply 5%, okay. Yeah. So the idea is, it is important to go get under the numbers and understand the whole picture. So that's the thought. Now we'll move to the next thing, right? See, this real estate, many of you said you want to buy the house. Now, buying is good. Of course, you should have your own first house, but the problem is the whole world is moving towards asset-light model, right? You don't have to own a car. You can get an Uber, right? If you don't have to own if you see the thing is, those who bought houses before 2010, they have got very good appreciation and very good returns. But those who bought house in India after 2014, is hardly any return. Now, in real estate, there are so many variables, right? There is location, there is regulation, government, RERA things. You have to deal with brokers, builders. You have to look at possession dates. My family bought some land, and it has been such a big headache because we have to deal with politicians, we have to deal with builders. See, typically, if you look at last 100-year data for real estate around the world, the residential real estate, the rental income is hardly 2 to 3%. Capital appreciation can be anywhere between 5 to 20%, 15%, depending on which location you buy it and how good the property is. Buying a real estate and selling a real estate is an extremely complicated thing. And there are better alternatives, like you can buy a real estate even through funds. And the commercial real estate does way better than residential real estate. And what is also happening is, because of this e-commerce and IT revolution, if you invest in, say, data centers, or you invest in warehouses, or you invest in high-end corporate real estate, the returns are much way better than what you will get in residential real estate. Residential real estate, mostly the money goes to the builder and the government and the banks. You need to have a home for your own usage, but if you're looking at it as an investment, there are a number of Excel models which you can use, but I'm not saying buy or rent, but you have to do the calculation, and that's the message. Okay, now moving on to the next thing, gold. Yeah, it's again lots of PC. In India's 80%, 75% wealth is stuck in real estate, and real estate only generates 5 to 10%, while other asset classes are doing much better. That's the message. Gold has been doing very well in last 20 years, but in the long term, if you again look at 100-year data, it around generates 5%. It's good for risk management and inflation, but it cannot be your primary way of investing, and the physical gold has its limitations. I love this space of startup investments, and I've looked at around 1,000 startups in last few years. I've invested few of them, five of them, and they have done well. It's the highest risk asset class. Usually there you don't measure returns in percentages. You measure returns whether the money doubles or becomes half, whether it becomes 2x, 3x, or you becomes half, or you lose everything. Traditionally this asset class generates the highest returns, but the risk is also the highest, because when the companies come to public markets, it's already discovered. The guys who invested say 10 lakh rupees in Paytm 10 years back, they got 600 crores in 2014 when the VCs came in, and now that will become 10 times when the Paytm gets listed in the market. So the earlier you enter, the risks are very high, but the returns can also be stupendous. But it's an art in itself. It's a full-time job. You have to look at business model. You have to have a very good understanding of the industry. You have to look at people. You have to look at technology. You have to look at customer feedback. And then the exit is not guaranteed. The one thing I think we all should think about whenever you are investing, the first thing you should know is, how am I going to exit? And will I even exit? There are lots of people, they come to you selling this is the best thing you can buy, but once you go deep, you realize that after when you want to sell it, nobody is going to buy it. That happens with some land, that happens with some of the bonds that get traded, that happens with some of these startups which fail. So the smartest investors, they are very particular about how long I want to hold this asset and when I want to exit. Because even it is so hard to get your money out of some of these institutions. So you have to really think deep about it, and you don't have to do everything yourself. You please understand your asset allocation. You understand which assets you want to play. You understand some basic rules of the game, but then it is important that you work with the experts, because each of these asset classes, they need the expertise to understand that. Anyway, now that is little overview of asset class. The few asset classes, there are so many asset classes, we just covered few. Then what is in it for us? What are the actionable insights, right? The thing is, you have to really think, are you leaving money on the table? The guys who are stuck in real estate, the guys who are stuck in fixed deposits, the guys who are taking unnecessary risk in a few of the unlisted entities, are you living? And it takes some time to build your portfolio, analyze it, assess it, and then find out those opportunities. And you can, it takes some work, but if you do that analysis very well, if you build your own balance sheet, if you build your own P&L, if you build your own holistic portfolio, you can do some stress testing, and then you can do the calculations. So and we can come to a conclusion, how much money you are losing, with what opportunities are you losing, what risks you are taking, and how your capital can be better deployed over time. And another thing is less is more. Warren Buffett says if you can just make 5 good investment decisions in life, that you might be good. People are buying 100 mutual funds, people are buying 10 real properties, people are buying land everywhere, people are buying stocks everywhere. And it becomes completely very unmanageable. Then you have to fill those forms, you have to do the taxation, you have to deal with brokers, you have to deal with agents. It's very important that you take stock of what you have and what are the opportunities where you can do easily better, right? That's important. Then, as I said, you have to do your risk assessment and you have to decide your asset allocation. It will not be static. You have to review it and change it every year. There's no, as I said, there's no one size fits all. Okay, fine. If you are a conservative investor, you will have a different solution. If you can take some risk, will have a different solution. If you are a balanced investor, your solution would be different. So that's it's worth spending some time on this. Be aware of brokers, right? People who are trying to sell you stuff, right? You please understand what are their motivations and how the system works. If the real estate is so good, then all these rich builders, why don't they keep it to themselves? Right? They are the richest, they are the smartest. Right? If you go to market, you go to the market as a buyer of real estate, you will get one price. You go to the same market and you say that I want to sell this real estate, you will get a different price. Because brokers work as per from where they get commission. Even I've been to all the banks, I've been to biggest banks and all of us have these experiences, right? The largest banks, they're selling you stuff, they're selling you things which don't make any sense. Sometimes they don't even tell you what is the rate of return. They don't tell you what are the risks involved. They don't tell you what are the exit options. They don't tell you they feel, I mean, they treat us like we are they're doing us a favor. They take our money and they create problems for us, and they get salaries out of our own money. Right? So it is very important to understand how the system works and whoever you are dealing with, what are their motivations. And then see, if you want to get somebody operated in your family, I hope that situation never comes, but you don't say that, "Arey, I am going to do it myself." This managing money, finances, investment, these are specialized areas. Why do companies hire CFOs? Again, companies are so great. Why do hire CFOs? Because they need these people who have those skills and who can do this full time, right? And they have got the necessary experience. They have got the necessary qualifications. People, I mean, every day you get so many messages: "Arey, buy this stock, sell this stock, do this, do that." You are asking your friends for advice. You are asking those brokers for advice. You are asking for those builders for advice, the agents for advice. They have their interest, and you have to talk to people who have the qualification, and you have to, it is okay to pay some fees. Actually, it's okay, but it should be transparent. It should be hidden. The problem is when people are selling you something, they will try to sell you where they get maximum commission, and they won't see. Typically, all these NFOs and all these new schemes and all these great offers which look very good in the beginning, but over time you see, if you apply some basic rules, they look very, very bad. So that's the thought. And of course, I mean, especially people from Maharashtra, India, whatever, right? I mean, we have to think about succession planning. We shouldn't be fighting. The approach should be how can we create more wealth for everybody? How can we create more opportunities? How can we create more jobs? How can we build more businesses? How can we maximize the output of what we have, right? People are just fighting for what is there in the family. How do we divide it? How do we break it? Then there are conflicts in the family. But these can be avoided if you think strategically, if you plan well, and you work on these systematic things. If you see the fight between Mukesh Ambani and Anil Ambani, Dhirubhai was the best business but he never wrote a will. And then these two brothers fought for 10 years Anil Ambani lost everything. Mukesh Ambani gained everything. So we have to work in advance to solve these problems. So in summary, there are number of tools available, amazing tools available to do all this work. The mutual fund analysis, there are places where you can analyze your private portfolio management system. There are good tools available offered by CAMS and SDL. There are tests available for your risk profiling. There are fee only advisors. They don't sell you things. They give you advice for a fee. And that advice is unbiased advice. There's so many apps like Revolut is for Europe, Stashaway is for Singapore, Walnut I use in India. There are ways to tap into global markets if you want to take those kind of risks. There are funds you can invest in which give you access to high growth markets. There are Excel models available, whether you should buy or rent, whether you should, how you do your retirement planning, how you do your portfolio analysis. And there's so many ways to digitize your assets, create a will, all of that. There's so many things available. We need to take benefit of that, right? So that our financial future is safe and secure. And it's not all about money, right? It is about the choice you have, the choice where you get to choose the kind of work you want to do in life. You get to choose the kind of people you want to get associated with in life. And you never want to be in a situation where you have to ask for help or you have to beg to somebody. You are in charge of your destiny, right? And we all work hard. We all work so hard. We spend so many hours in our workplaces doing the work. Sometimes we don't like working with the people we don't like. Sometimes there are ethical issues, respect issues. But it's possible if you have got the skills, if you have the plan, if you have the strategy, if you have the attitude, and you're willing to work hard, it is possible to have that freedom. I think I worked hard for 25 years. Now I feel yes, I'm not 100% there, but I'm on the journey, and maybe I'm there 80%. So I'm trying to share what I learned. So in summary, freedom is very much possible. Asset allocation is critical and important to understand different asset classes. Don't fall in the traps of brokers and market movements. Do intelligent outsourcing. I also have something important. See, I seek help all the time in these matters. I don't claim that I know everything, and all these things need a lot of work to put your data in place, to analyze it, to build your balance sheet, P&L model, to evaluate it independently, get the expert inputs. And it is not just theory. You have to experiment it. You have to work on it. You have to analyze data. You have to compare, benchmark. So what I was thinking, I am passionate about teaching and all, right? So that's how we organize this session. I was thinking we can create a program where we will do all these things together. Do your risk profiling, build your balance sheet, P&L and cash flows, do your asset allocation review, benchmark it with the best of the best, do asset class specific review, look at your mutual funds, look at the ratings, look at their equity portfolio, look at your real estate portfolio, look at private opportunities, startups and private equity and alternative investment funds, and identify opportunity to optimize and reduce risk. See if you are missing opportunities in the global markets, local markets. Learn, review, implement, and track, and automate wherever possible. So I'm thinking of this. This is an idea. Now this is an idea stage. But if there are enough people who are interested working on this, it will take 30 to 45 minutes of your time in a week. And the idea would be more to learn a concept and apply it to your own data, and come to conclusions which can help you in the long term. Not like my experience. I've spent a lot of time learning and studying across the world, but now I realize that yes, you can get good MBA degrees and you can get good diplomas and you can do good online certifications, but unless you apply it and unless you do it, it doesn't happen. So this is an idea. If somebody is interested in joining such program, few people have already expressed interest and they have said we can work on this. Sorry, I've missed some of the questions. I will take them one by one. If you please feel free to unmute yourself and ask them one by one. Maybe you can raise a hand. I will also look at. So this is what I had to share. And yeah, I'm also looking at the chat, and we also have we also have hello. Sorry, it's another sales call. Sorry, I thought. So yeah, sorry. I think we have taken a little more time. But
Mahesh, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I think thanks for this session, Mahesh, and I think we discuss almost all the problem that at least I'm facing since last couple of years and never think about it. So like I'm investing since last 6-7 years. I will say maybe 10 years to start with the real estate, and since last 5 years in equity, mutual funds, and FDs, and almost all the options that you discuss. I'm investing in all the options, and I see some of my investment is right now showing as like minus 98% of returns, and some of my investment is it's saying like plus 300% of returns, and the overall my portfolio is still showing as a positive, but looks like I done lots of mistake while after going through your session. So like what is the way of coming out of it and to start the journey right now, so at least whatever the mistake I have done till now, I can come out of it.
So that's what this whole session was for, that, right? See, the thing is, there are no mistakes, there is only learning. In I think there's no failure, there's no mistake, right? I think all of us on this call have done very well in our careers, in our life, with our finances, right? And it's a journey. Nobody has fallen from the sky knowing everything, and nobody even if you're not making mistakes, probably you're not alive. So we can have a separate conversation, and
Okay.
That's the purpose of proposing this workshop, where we can create a group and we can work on this systematically, where you can work on your own data, and then we can look at the best of the best advice, and then see how do we stack up against that. What are the areas where we can do better? What are the areas where we need help? And where if we need some expert advice, how do we get that expert advice? Because see, all these assets, you need one is the fundamentals. Your fundamentals have to be clear. You need to have some initial perspective. See, the thing is, I also, when I work with experts, right, sometimes I mean I have to question those experts all the time, right? No, you can't do this. So for example, somebody wanted to invest at the top of the market my own money. I told them, no, you can't do that. No, you have to stagger it over a period of time. Don't do stupid things for your own commission, right? So there are lots of things we will, as we build on this workshop, we'll discuss and we'll keep sharing. I see a lot of questions in the chat window also.
Yeah, that is what I was just saying, Mahesh. There are very good questions in chat also. I don't know, like we have time constraint, definitely. If you can just take some of the questions, that will be really
yeah. So given that we have some international audience also, I just want to say that this is what I had to share. We will of course discuss questions one by one, whoever can stay back. And I have time, and if those of you have time, we can definitely discuss, and I take up all the questions. But those who have to leave, thank you very much for joining. This was a sincere attempt to share something I've learned, and I've been struggling with this for 20 years, right? But now I think now I've learned something, and it's going to be useful for me, my family, and I think it can be useful for many others like us. So thank you for that, especially Iris Lauscher, who has joined from London. Thank you for being with us. Of course, everybody else, but the thing is, I was speaking in the Indian context. It might not, some of the things might not have resonated with people not from India. So thank you for that. I'll take the questions one by one. how do Subir is asking, how do we do risk profiling? There are good tests available which you can take to do your risk profiling. We can look at that. There are lots of online tools, but are they foolproof or good enough? That we have to evaluate. The second thing is Rupesh is asking home loan to save tax. This is a striker in some cases as long as building an asset for long term. What's your view on that? See, I'm not against real estate. See, the thing is, see, all the assets are good assets, provided you buy them at a right price. Okay. So those of us who have bought real estate before 2010, we are sitting on huge profits. But you need to know what is the logic, and are you making an informed decision about this tax thing, right? Tax thing is like, see, that the way this tax thing works is, okay, you give me okay, the way the banks tell you or the government tells you, right? Okay, you buy a 1 crore house, right? So for that you pay me 1 crore, and you save how much tax? You save how much tax you are going to save. So you have to do the calculation. There is no simple answer here. The thing is, usually these tax saving instruments don't do very well, because it's kind of a bribe that they give you. Array, I'm not able to sell this, but you take it, I will give you tax benefit. So you have to do the calculation. I'm not saying do this or that, but you have to do the calculation. If you have a great location, if your real estate is in a good condition, if it's a high-end property, I'll tell you, people who have bought real estate in London in last 10 years have done amazingly well. I've got friends there. People who have bought real estate in upcoming areas, they have done well. People who have bought, so you have to look at things holistically and don't get fooled by these people who are trying to sell you stuff. This taxation thing is always very tricky. It's like, okay, you give me 1 crore, and then, okay, you save few lakh rupees tax, and then you deal with that real estate for next 20 years. You do the maintenance, you pay government tax, you pay transaction cost. Real estate transaction cost is 10%, right? Then you have to deal with brokers, you have to deal with the tenants, they will come and go. So you have to look at things holistically, not just look at one thing. So I hope that answers your question. What is good, buying physical gold or online buying? See, there is a big trend in all over the world. What you call is a financialization of the assets. Every asset you can buy offline in a physical form. Now you can buy online. Now, the problem with physical gold is you have to store it. You have to be worried about theft. There's also a depreciation that happens, and all of that, right? If you are buying it for your family purposes, where your family members have to use it for special occasions, that's a separate story. But if you're buying gold as an investment, the cleaner approach could be buying it online, and even government is coming up with bonds where they are saying we will give you 2.5% interest rate also. So, but again, see, in this, the fundamental is, in this world there are smart assets and there are dumb assets. There are smart people and there are dumb people. Okay, what are the smart assets? Smart assets are the ones where there is rotation. You invest. You invest. Those who invested 10 lakh rupees in Reliance when the IPO came, right? Now are sitting on at least few crore rupees, because Reliance has worked hard to create that value. They have created Jio. Their petrochemicals businesses are doing well. There are other business, even in Tata Group, right? In TCS, the shares I had bought in 2003, I bought share for 800 rupees. Now it's worth 20,000 rupees, because that company has achieved phenomenal growth. Now the gold is not going to do that. Gold is going to exchange hands here and there, and people can wear ornaments. Is it going to be useful in the industry? Is it going to, TCS has created 5 lakh jobs. TCS has served billions or hundreds of customers around the world. Like we have Valmik who has worked for a company, IT company, and the company has rewarded him very well through ESOPs or whatever, right? The company, if you get good companies, and if those companies can create value for customers, shareholders, then it works well. But you have to identify those companies. Things like gold, things like crypto, things like residential real estate, are these things going to create value, right? Somebody who had if you had bought Titan share in say 2003, that share would have worth how much? If you had invested 1,000 rupees in Titan in say 15 years back, it would be worth at least 1 lakh rupee. But had you bought a 1,000 rupee watch in 2003 in Titan, that watch today would be useless. You have to think like that, right? What are the avenues to look at startups and how to judge the right startup to invest? Thanks, Chakri. Good to see you here. See, this startup investing is a very interesting game. I've been doing this for last 5 years. I've looked at 1,000 startups, and my startups have done well. I'm very happy about them, and I need to do a lot more. I've written a lot of articles on I run a LinkedIn newsletter, and we also have a YouTube channel which
hi Mahesh, I have an opinion here. Yeah, actually, regarding the investment in Titan and Reliance, there is another side of that. In the case of idea like that, if we invested some lakhs, it is very much negative right now. There's another side of that story, right?
Sorry, I didn't get you. Hello.
Yeah. Can you hear me properly now?
Yeah. What is the other side of the story?
Yeah, if we invested in idea or some other stocks like which were decreased right now, that is another side of the story. I was mentioning like that.
Yeah. So that's what, right? See, that's what I'm saying. That the stock picking is a specialized skill. Not all of us have it, and it requires a full-time effort, right? So there are companies that will succeed tremendously. There are companies that will fail. What you need.
My point was actually, if we pick the right stock at the right time, they might also fail in the course of time. That was my point actually. In the time of idea, a few years back, 5 or 6 years back, it was actually a very good fundamental like that. We found much potential, but after coming of Reliance, it was not able to succeed.
Yeah, so that's what, that's where I completely agree with you. That's where your asset allocation has to be right. And the second thing is when you are building a portfolio with companies, what we call a portfolio theory or a portfolio approach. See, not everybody is going to be a blockbuster or a winner. The way, and that also relates to Chakri's question. See, the way we look at even business investing or a startup investing or a venture capital or a private equity, you identify 20 good ideas. Okay, out of those 20 good ideas, 10 are going to fail. Okay, 10 will fail, 5 will do okay. 2-3 will do much better, but 1 will be a blockbuster, and that one blockbuster will cover for all the losses. So that's how you have to look at this. So nobody in the world can tell you.
Mahesh, I want to add in here that you cannot just buy any stock and keep it or just sit on that, but you need to monitor that, and you need to check every 3 months or every 6 months. Like he said, he had taken some shares or he's having some example of shares that they have purchased, and now they are like in minus. So before going minus, we should come out. So we need to continuously monitor that. So this is what is required. That is the reason we need guide or the people like you who can guide us.
No, we are building. So the thing is, you have to take a view, right? In the market, there are bulls and bears, right? Bulls believe that the human progress is going to go. See, are you a bull or a bear? What I said, we don't have to be a bull or a bear. You have to believe, you have to see that how your interests are protected. And you have to see where there are wealth creation opportunities, whether you are able to capture them, but without exposing yourself to undue risk. That's the thought. Of course, there's a lot more that can be discussed. And thank you, Shashikantji, for that thought. Yeah. Now, to get back to Chakri's question, what are the avenues to look out for startups and how to judge the right startup to invest? So see, these private markets, what we call is angel investing, private equity, venture capital. These are private actually. So what I mean by that is when the company gets listed on public markets, it becomes available for everybody, and you can pick and choose. But these private markets, they run based on your networks. So for example, because I got to study at London Business School, I have a very good network of 50,000 plus very talented individuals. They are bankers, investment bankers, they are founders, they are investors, they run businesses, they have gotten the very high good corporate positions. So we share with each other those opportunities, and we help each other to acquire opportunities. There are also networks which are professionally managed, and you have to pay some membership fees and you get to be part of those networks. So there are networks all over the world. There are good networks from US, Canada, Europe, China, not China, I don't know much, but Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan. They ask you for a certain membership fees, and in return they say these are the startups which can make available for you. But it's a smaller than small cap. So the risk goes proportionally higher. And then you need a sector specialist. You need to understand that sector. You have to have your own criteria. You have to do a thorough due diligence process. You have to evaluate technology. You have to evaluate IP. You have to look at the background of the team. You have to look at their experiences. You have to look at their potential. You have to look at customer response. You have to look at competition. You have to look at their financials. You have to look at their business model. You have to look at their projections. There's so many variables. Again, it's a team game where what people do is they create groups of people who are specialists in each of these areas, and then they get involved. And it's a very interesting thing, which is I've written a lot about in our newsletter, which I publish every other week on LinkedIn, and also we are planning to share a lot more insights on our YouTube channel as we grow the community. Yeah. So,
thanks, Mahesh.
Thanks, Chakri. Good to
yeah,
see you
good to get connected.
Yeah. We'll chat.
Sure, definitely.
Yeah. I think that also answer Ankush's question. Neelam, thanks for that comment. You're a sister, so you'll always support me. So that's
no. Anyways, the overall session was really good.
Yeah. So I think there is what is this? Suraj, there was a comment. Milind Maheshwari, thanks for that comment. Please feel free to unmute yourself, and if you have a question, please feel free to ask.
So Mahesh, I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Rajan, and I'm based out of Dubai.
Okay.
Great to get connected to a fellow LGS alum. So just to quickly, one or two questions I have. See, I've been an entrepreneur for last 11 years, and I'm really good at doing what I do. But I've been very, very bad with the personal finances.
Right.
And my question is that, when it comes to financial advisors, if you can trust, do you think it's better to do it manage on your own, or financial advisors will be a better choice for such people like me?
So see, there is something called as there's a very nice concept called wisdom of the crowd and storm intelligence. Right? See, the thing is, finally the responsibility lies on your shoulders. It's your money. If something good happens to it, you benefit, you and your family benefits. If something bad happens to it, it's your problem. Right? Now, that's what I in the slides also I said. intelligent outsourcing. See, the problem is you can't be everything to everyone, right? You are a successful entrepreneur, you have your own business to run. If you also want to be a good investment manager and a good financial planner and advisor, and you want to execute it, it's too much to ask, right? So while you can't leave it to them, right, you need to have your own view and your own questions. My experience is there are things which I understand and I know where I will do it. I would like to do it myself, but there are so many things which I don't understand where I will take expert advice. But what I will make sure that expert is really an expert. I have to validate that expert, and I have to understand what is his motivation. And that's where actually there is so much mis-selling that happens in India. Whether it's your guys who sell you insurance, whether the guys who sell you equity market, the guys who sell you bonds, the guys who sell you real estate, because they are only working for their own commission. Now SEBI, the regulators are getting tough, whether it is SEBI, whether it is RERA, whether it is other insurance regulators, they are saying, please stop this. You please don't work for commission, you can work for fees. You give unbiased advice, you get some fees, keep it upfront, but think about the customer. So and as I said again, there are no, as I have always said, there is no one size fits all. If you have the time, bandwidth, and intent to do it yourself, like everybody does, which is not a good idea, because we will never be. We are not CFAs, or we are not CPAs, or we are not full time. We can't track the markets full time. We are not venture capitalists, right? These are specialized people. The guys who do well are the ones who have got years of experience. They have got tremendous failure and success backing them. So if you can borrow their brains, why not? But it has to be win-win, fair, long-term, unbiased, right?
Got it.
So
another question I had. How much is the timing of the market important if you are doing SIPs, monthly investments? Does it kind of neutralize the effect of market, or how do you feel about it?
See, there's so many variables, right? See, the problem is that the opportunity. I think if you are doing SIP, I think it's a good thing. You get time cost averaging, which is a good thing. See, if you look at the stocks, right? The stocks, the timing. See, there are 10 variables as I listed on the slide, right? Timing is one thing, valuation another thing, the asset class is third thing, the active management, the expenses is one more thing. See, the data shows, and there is very good analysis available for data for last maybe 20, in some markets for 20 years, some markets 35 years, some markets 100 years, that if you are investing in good companies, if you are investing in the best of the best companies, the timing doesn't matter, because these are the winners, and they will always do better. And the problem with timing is it's hard to catch the bottom, and it's hard to leave at the top. So there are some very good things, resources I will be happy to share with you. If you are, see, the winners like say HDFC or Asian Paints or say Pidilite or Page Industries or Divi's Lab, or I mean there's so many stocks. If you look at their last 20 years ka data, no matter what time you enter, you would have done very well, because the compounding happens because of the revenue growth, because of the sales, because of the profitability, because of the return on equity, and because of the solid market position with great differentiation, and because there is a huge headroom to grow. So if you are going with winners, the timing might not matter that much, but it's very subjective actually. I can't say this way or that way, because there are so many variables. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it answers. Thank you so much.
Yeah. While I mean, first of all, timing is hard to do unless again you're doing it full time and you have you have a team to do it. The second thing is, if you are going with good companies, they do well. Yes, even I am scared right now to enter market at the top, but my the guys I work with, they're saying you don't have to worry if you are getting into good companies, because those companies are anyway going to grow, triple, become 4 times in the next 5 to 10 years. So if you have a long-term 5 to 7 year horizon, you should not worry. But I am also cautious. I am concerned, right? Yeah.
Miss Rupesh here. I have a question. Can I?
Yeah.
So,
Please.
Miss, if I have some personal like advice I would take from you in terms of investment, is there a way I can reach out to you?
Yeah. So we have shared the contact details. I think we are already connected. We are also organizing this program where we all can learn and share together. So
Exactly.
of course,
so right now I have changed my job and I was working for 26 years. I had a lump sum money. I was just reaching out to some expert, and they've asked me to put some around 60-70% in arbitrary fund, and then we will slowly move it to the other funds, and the remaining 40-30% in the liquid fund. So just wanted to a quick suggestion, like it is a good idea or something.
So see to be I'm not a debt market expert, so I won't be able to comment on that. But as I said, right? See, what we discussed was a framework. That framework needs to be applied to your situation, and we have to reduce the risk and optimize your returns. And if you have a portfolio approach, and if you are looking at working with reliable people, and if your expectations are reasonable, it needs to be looked in details. Actually, we can look at that later. Yeah.
Perfect. So we'll try to reach out to you. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, perfect. Any other question? No, I think I hope this was a useful discussion.
It's very useful, Mahesh. It's really indeed a very useful.
Yeah.
I was not knowing that this kind of information going to be there, and really looking for your 8-week program, because that will keep us aware more about how to do finance planning. Because my own belief is that money can be earned, but money can be created also. Even if we have a smaller amount of money coming in, but with the right planning, you can have a corpus.
Yeah. No, I think see that what happens is this: the compounding can work in your favor, and it can go against you also. See, if you do the right things, the compounding can take you anywhere. But if you do the wrong things, then you are losing. I mean, and I know we are all losing opportunities. Even if you just do few things right, there is a lot of value that can be created. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey Mahesh, so this this workshop that you talked about, how do we get access to it? How do you get started? And if people are interested, how do we join that?
We'll come back to, if you are interested, please do drop us a note on the I'm there on LinkedIn, or Prithviraj, who helped me in many of these matters. This email ID is shared. I'm very much accessible on LinkedIn. You can drop us a note if you are interested. There are a few other people who have expressed interest, and we will plan for it. It will be sometime. We are thinking about it sometime in August, and it is not a workshop. It's a kind of a 8-week program where we will work on the real data, right? And it will be personal. It will be personalized for your requirements, right? Because there's a lot of data analysis that needs to be done before you come to some conclusion. You can. So we'll, if you are interested, let us know. We can discuss that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mahesh, one question from me. I'm sorry. I don't want to, push it. So like you said, I mean, anyway, if you read through the blogs and articles, currently the market is really high, right? And you also indicated like it is very scary to get into the market now. So does it only apply to certain segment, or it applies to everything, like equity, MF, SIP, everything?
So see, I mean, let me qualify what I said about market, right? See, market right now is, see, again, there are multiple ways to look at it. Sometimes the markets are what we call as frothy. that means they don't make any sense. Like Bitcoin was $65,000 2 months back. Now it is $30,000, right?
Yeah.
So that is called froth, right? The same with real estate. What happened in 2007, what happened in these things happen all the time. Right now, market is not expensive but not frothy. Is a little expensive but not frothy. So see, everything is linked. Everything. I think the market valuations get justified if right now the interest rates are lower, right? And the economy is bouncing back after COVID pandemic, and the expectations are good, and there is a very cheap money available all over the world, because in US, Europe, Japan, you get money at 1%. And there's a lot of stimulus that is coming because of these things. So that money is landing in markets. See, now you all see, whether you are doing SIP or mutual fund or even direct equity or PMS or derivatives, it's all going in the same market, right? If you're talking about equity, right? Now, usually the market valuation is done based on the price to earnings multiple, right? See see we'll have to go into little basics here, but how do I explain it to you? So right now market is expensive, but it is not frothy, so it is not too expensive. And you still have ways to stagger your investments over time, so you don't have to put lump sum, right? And as I said, if you're putting money in good companies, they always do well. And typically the equity investment is supposed to be done for minimum 5 to 7 years, because that is how it takes, how long it takes for economic cycle to work out. So if you are investing for minimum 5 to 7 years, if you are investing in good companies, and if you have that kind of patience, and you're doing those selections, then and you can stagger it a bit, then it's fine. But the thing is, your expectations have to be reasonable. So people who say that market should give them 20%, 25% every year, market doesn't owe you anything.
Got it.
It's the call you take. Right? Nobody owes us anything. So so I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I think we already ran over the time.
Mahesh, I had one last question. For Rajan once again. So for the NRIs, what do you recommend, to invest in US markets or Indian markets, considering that you were mentioning that the dollar benefits vis-a-vis rupee benefits at this point of time have been on the decline?
What I was recommending throughout is I showed you portfolio of Blackstone Group, and I also showed you portfolio of Ray Dalio, and we also looked at portfolio of the richest of the companies, right? The family office. If you look at those earlier slides. Now, so see, in India the growth is there. It again comes down to where you are investing, right, and how you are investing. Some people say in India the growth is quite high, and a lot of things that have happened in US they are yet to happen. So India, I think for people like you and I think we have a problem of choice, and if you can optimize and hedge properly, that might be the best strategy, right? As I showed, as far as investments are concerned, yes, people when I raise money for the startups, right, people do prefer startups from US market, because there's a rule of law and there is organized market and there is more protection and things like that. See, but the gems are everywhere, right? Finally it comes down to good businesses. If you can find good businesses in US, or good fund managers in US, or good assets in US, you can look at that. Likewise, if you can find those assets in India, you can. It's finally you're investing in a business, right?
Yeah.
So does that help?
Yes.
And somebody like you, I think you're in a very good position to play across the markets, right? So you don't have to take a single currency or a single country or a single sector or a single asset class risk, right?
And you were talking about Revolut in Europe. What are the applications which are
It's like Scriptbox in India.
I don't know what the but what is equivalent for
I'm losing your voice. Sorry.
I said, what are the equivalent of Revolut in US markets?
I can't, since I'm not in US, I can't think of it anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah. I'll have to check. Yeah. So anyway, I think so please do get back in touch if you would like to be part of what things we are doing, and please do support us, help us if you want to organize these sessions in your respective companies. We can do that, and the idea is to build a community and grow and learn and share with each other and then support each other. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good evening and good night. And have a good weekend. Bye.
Thank you, Mahesh. Same to you.
Bye.